Welcome to the Reinvent Your World broadcast. My name is Donna Woolham, and I'm your host. My goal is for every woman to know that God loves you and He's for you. And no matter where you are today, you can start right now and create an incredible new life. Let's get started into the show, okay? There is a force in the earth that influences and affects everything we do. You might say it's the gravity of personal development, and it is resistance. It's everywhere. It's in the wind, and it's in how we make decisions. It either drags our dreams down or it pulls on our doubts. And resistance will either strengthen you or wear you down completely. And it really is a matter of what you decide, what I decide. Because resistance is something that we can learn from, it's something we can grow from, or we can allow resistance to magnify our very worst fears. And I personally believe that resistance is an incredible gift and an incredible tool that we can use in our own growth and personal development if we take the time to pay attention. It shows us where our fears are seated. And once we know where our fears are seated, then we can address those things and begin to move through them and move beyond them. Resistance points out our insecurities. It's the voice in our head saying, who do you think you are to do that? Or, you'll probably fail when you try that. Some of it feels like procrastination, actually. And in those moments when we embrace procrastination, we make it our own little pet, and we make it something that we cherish, and we wear it as an identity of, I'm just a procrastinator. But really what's happening is that procrastination causes us great damage. And so looking at the reasons why we're procrastinating is helpful. It is looking at the roots of the resistance that helps us begin to dig out the reasons that we are stuck, why we are stale, and why we are not living the dreams that we were created to live. Now, in the last broadcast, I talked about seasons of change. And so resistance is really just beautifully fits right upon there, because if we think about spring, when things that have been planted are growing, or maybe we're planting new things and they're coming up out of the dirt, that seedling has to really push through a lot, dirt and, fertilizer, manure, to ever break the top of the soil so that it can begin to grow. I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Price, but he wrote a book a generation ago called The Real Faith. And he has a story in here that really fits in this moment. So I'm going to just take a moment and read this story to you. Once upon a time, there was a tiny little seed planted in the ground. It was an acorn. After a while, it shed its little overcoat and cuddled away in the arms of Mother Nature so that it might be fed and grow. All through the long winter nights, she kept that little seed warm, and when the springtime sun came out, its little acorn heart burst open with joy and delight. It started to grow. Then a man came along and put a big, heavy rock over the little seed. It commenced to worry and fret for fear it would never be able to raise its little head to where it could see the light of day. It wanted to wear a garland of leaves for its hair and to grow to be beautiful and strong. One day, its feeble hands touched the rock. They were such tiny, tender little hands. The little growing tree felt so helpless. It did not struggle or try to move the rock, which was the enemy of its heart and life. It just grew. One day the rock was lifted, It was pushed out of the way, and the little leafy hands clapped for joy. Who lifted the rock? The seed? No, it was something within the seed which no man in the world has ever been able to reproduce. It was God's power that pushed over that rock. And so, my friend listening to me today, there is within you, through the power of God, the ability to move past and move beyond the power that seems to be holding you back. It really is a matter about being who God created you to be. Hey, I'm here to tell you that resistance is hard. I feel it all the time. Almost every single day, I feel resistance against living out the call of God on my life. It would be so much easier for me to bow my head to the resistance, to turn my back on the call and the confirmation of God over my life, and to go do something else. I say that it would be easier, but I can tell you that there was a season of time when things were hard for me, and I just said, Lord, why didn't you make me to be just content to work a 9 to 5 and be content in that and just to do that? And he gave me the opportunity, hooray, to do that. To be on someone else's schedule, to be on someone else's time, to clock in when they said to clock in, to stay when they said to stay, to eat lunch when they said to eat lunch, to leave the office when it was time to leave the office. And hey, that's good, and that's right, and that's profitable. However, for some of us, we're not made for that. We're made to live a different kind of life. And when we try to fold ourselves into a place we are not meant to be, we feel the confines of resistance. Resistance is trying to pull us out if we will pay attention instead of holding us down. And so I want to go back to these concepts, the internal, the external, and the spiritual resistance. So being able to identify, first of all, the source of that resistance is important. And it's why internal resistance is dealing with our core of who we have been made to be. And external resistance can simply be someone else's fears for us, their dread for us, that if we are moving too quickly or we're moving in a direction that's uncomfortable for them, that they feel like they need to help us to be restrained and to do the smart things, the wise things, the careful things. And that's a beautiful situation whenever that comes out of love. However, there are those who put external resistance on us because of their fear that maybe we'll surpass them. Maybe they are the ones who are going to hold us back because they don't want us to shine. And that's a sad thing. But again, that comes to that point of knowing who you are and who God has made you to be so that you can walk confidently and securely in that knowledge. And I think about 2 scriptures about Jesus that really shake me and make me understand that I am still on this journey to wholeness. And one of those is there's a lot of conflict coming. And Jesus is warning his disciples, and he said, the evil one is coming, but he has nothing in me. A spiritual resistance where the enemy is coming to try and stop the plan of God. But because Jesus knows who he is and what his purpose is, there's nothing that the enemy can latch onto to hold him back and stop him from doing what he's meant to do. And so in these moments, knowing who God has made you to be and the call of God on your life, and even if you're still just testing out the waters and trying to figure that out, stepping forward a little bit will help you to know if this is the direction you're supposed to go. But when we know who we are and what we are meant to do, then it keeps us from being held back by spiritual forces. And then in John chapter 13, right at the beginning of the upper room story, it says Jesus, because he knew where he had come from and where he was going, he took up a towel and washed the feet of the disciples. There wasn't anything external that anyone could say to him. We even see Peter saying, "Lord, no, you cannot wash my feet." And Jesus says, if you knew who it was, you would not stop with your feet being washed. Jesus was so secure internally of who he had been made to be that it didn't matter what the external pressures were trying to stop him from doing what he knew he was supposed to do. The most powerful thing you can do in this realm for this particular aspect of resistance is investing time to become very, very clear on who God has made you to be and what he is calling you to do. And, you may be saying, well, I know that I'm not called to go out to another country to be a gospel evangelist. I know that I'm not supposed to be a preacher. I'm not supposed to do any of this or that. And that's great. That's not the only call of God a person can have on their life, because some of us are called to be moms, and some of us are called to be children, and some of us are called to be wives, and some of us are called to be employees. Some of us are called to Walmart or Target or the Forbes 100. It's not about listening to what other people's expectations of us are. We see this again. Jesus going into Jerusalem and all of the people clamoring for him to take up his position as king, as earthly Messiah, and he did not let those opinions sway him. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, and he knew the season he was in. That's going back. If you haven't read it or listened to it or watched the video, I really encourage you to go back and watch on my YouTube channel or to read on my website the articles about season of change. Because when you have this clarity about where you are and what you're doing and the direction that you're heading, when resistance comes up, you can embrace that as a friend, as a helper, as a signpost to what may be slowing you down. There is this power of being persistent in the journey. It's about learning how to have patience in the waiting, because there's times when resistance is the moment of wait, not yet. It's Paul and Silas in the prison when they were doing exactly what they were supposed to do, when they had heeded the call to go to Macedonia, when they were doing the will of God and it was still hard. We need perseverance like they did. They needed patience to wait for the fullness of the revelation of what God had. And it seemed like it was the absolute worst place for them, being held in jail. But in that moment, the jailer, the other prisoners, and the jailer's household experienced the grace of Jesus Christ. Resistance is something beautiful and lovely. It's when we press too hard against resistance without learning what it's teaching us that the difficulty comes. If I'm working on a new project and I feel resistance, it is wise for me to stop and to listen and to say, what is it that you are trying to tell me, resistance? What am I believing or what am I not believing? What lie have I raised up against the truth of God? Or what place of unbelief am I bowing to instead of truth that God has for me? Is it a not yet kind of resistance, or is it a slowed down kind of resistance? Is it a spiritual resistance where I need to be fully clothed in the armor of God and standing, letting God do the work in front of me to tear down the barriers and the walls and the strongholds? I just want you today to be encouraged that the voice of resistance is your friend. We can't allow it to rule us. We can't allow it to just simply be there and day after day after day not address it. But if you are addressing the reasons for the resistance, the questions, being curious and saying, I wonder where this is coming from. I wonder what it's pointing to. I wonder where it's leading me. If you can learn to do that in those moments, you will receive incredible revelation. Revelation about who the Lord is, revelation about who you are, revelation about some of the enemies that may be aligned against you, and revelation about the people around you. It is a choice that we get to make. Understanding that when we can look resistance straight in the eye and not flinch away from it, but say, I am here for the lessons that you have for me, then we can step into that next place of transformation, that next place of truth, that next place of reconciliation with the difference between who God has created us to be and who we are right now. So, where is your resistance, lovely one? What are you feeling in this moment that's holding you back? Is it a giant wave of water? Is it a heavy breeze? Is it a silent fear? If you have time, I really recommend that after you stop listening to this, that you sit quietly and you just say, Holy Spirit, show me what resistance is trying to teach me today. And begin the process of tearing down brick by brick by brick the wall of resistance. Because in this moment is your opportunity to develop more resilience and more strength for the journey ahead. Because this won't be the last time you face this voice of resistance, especially if it's a spiritual force, especially if it's an internal voice. Because until you can look that lie dead square in the eyes and believe to the very core of you that it is not true, you will continue to face this same battle. And after all, it's for freedom that Jesus came to set us free, lovely one. And he desires your freedom and wholeness. So let's do this, okay? Resistance, you have no power, but I embrace you as a friend to teach me the next step in my journey to wholeness. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that something that you heard helped you to be encouraged and inspired. And in fact, if it has, would you do me a favor? Would you please just share this with a friend of yours? And join me over on social media on Facebook and Instagram. Well, you know, wherever you are, I'm probably there too. But be sure and go to the website, DonnaWoolham.com, and grab the free resources that we have for you. Thanks again, and have a wonderful Living at My Best day.